Hello and welcome to the Monster Mechanics podcast, where we take creatures of myth and media and see how they can be improved. I am your host, Scott Paladin, and with me as always is the Dean Martin to my Jerry Lewis, Zach Jaquays. What are we talking about today, Zach?
Today we're talking about predators.
So, predators, we're not talking about the classification of any creature that eats another creature. We're talking specifically about the aliens from the Predator movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you have not seen the Predator movies, the first one starred Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they have since gone on. There was a second one with Danny Glover. There's a second one with Danny Glover as the main character, and then they've gone on from there. It has since been merged also with the Alien universe. But the Predators are a spoiler alert, they're an alien species that comes to Earth to hunt humans for sport.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movies, they are like 7.5 feet tall, super muscly creatures with like crazy spider faces and dreadlocks. And they have cloaking devices and phaser cannons and arm blades and things like that. And
it looks like the kind of monster I would have designed when I was 13.
They are metal as heck. That is true. They're definitely got that 13-year-old awesomeness vibe. But I have to say, as I was watching that movie recently, I hadn't seen it in a long time. I rewatched Predator 1, and I kind of hate almost everything about this creature. The best part of now there's two. Okay. The two best parts of the Predator is one, the cloaking device effect is super great.
Yeah.
In the movies, they make the cloaking device effect like a sort of a ripple in the background. So they're transparent, but as they move, you can see the movement as the light sort of ripples as it goes around them. That looks super great.
And that's sort of become the standard for any kind of cloaking tech.
Yeah.
Ever since then, they haven't really changed the formula on that.
No, and it works really great. So I'm totally going to give him props for that. And the other thing is that when the Predator takes off his mask and he's got the like mandibles and like the lamprey mouth and all of the little spiny bits and all that, that face is great. That is a super alien scary face, and I love it. And almost everything about them is dumb.
As an aside, that just reminded me of the Oblargag meme we sent each other back and forth relentlessly in the early 2000s.
My wife and I still say Oblargag, Yablargag to each other a lot. So yeah, well, I guess I got to link that in the show notes now. So let us do what we do best, and let's take the Predator and make them better, or at least different. Let's make them different, make them make more sense.
All right.
I think the first thing first angle I want to take at them is that it is so stupid that their entire society is built around like hunting and like noble warrior bull.
Mm-hmm.
It makes them just this one note character that like this entire alien species is built off of this one thing they saw in this one movie. So we're just going to operate under the assumption that this species, like the part of the Predator part of the species, is just a bunch of big game hunters who are doing this for fun or for whatever importance they get from it. And that there's probably a bunch of this species off being accountants and being engineers and flying spaceships and like working in shops and stuff, and that have no involvement with this hunting humans for sport thing.
To be fair, they did a focus group, and the Auditor did not test as well as the Predator.
Dude, the Auditor is a great name for a movie. I'd watch that. That sounds cool. Anyway, okay, so yeah, let's come up with an answer. What does this prospect of hunting humans mean for these creatures as a society? Okay. Is it really just like we treat big game hunting, where like overpaid dentists take a vacation where they spend a bunch of money in order to shoot an exotic species? Or
I do kind of like the idea that there's some parallels there. Could also go into the side that like maybe it's actually a respected tradition in there, and like not everyone participates, but it's not exactly like you're not going to have, I don't even know what we call these guys if they're not predators anymore. Whatever their species is.
Oh, they have a name. Let's find out.
If they're just protesting, hunting humans or whatever.
Okay, how the heck do I pronounce that?
If it's in the language of the predators, you probably just scream at your mic.
Yeah, so no, I just can't remember what this particular IPA. Because I know if I get this really wrong, that our that somebody's going to tweet at me, and I prefer not to have somebody tweet at me about how I got it completely wrong the whole time. Okay, so that is a post-velar fricative, which is sort of... Hello, Editor Scott here. Past Scott has misread a postal velar fricative as a post-velar fricative and has thus gotten himself confused. The actual pronunciation of the most used species name for the predator species is something like yancha. With that corrected, we can proceed with our program and laugh at Past Scott's inability to read clearly. That doesn't help me at all. Okay, so they have a second name, which we're just going to use, which is Hishku-10. I guess that maybe is what we're going to call them now. The other one is the Yautcha, something like that.
Gotcha.
I don't know what I can't remember what a velar fricative is off the top of my head. So
we'll go with Hishku-10 for
Hishku-10. Yeah. Okay. So other members of the Hishku-10 are not necessarily, could be protesting these as like, oh yeah, these are an endangered species. They're only on one planet. We really can't waste them like this. Something I'm thinking is, I like the idea of sort of splitting the difference between it being respectable and also like extraneous and not useful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, this is something that like specifically the nobility, like the aristocracy of this species and this culture do.
Okay.
Where they have to hunt a dangerous species as part of their like coming of age ritual, and that most of the society doesn't do this anymore, but that it's still very important to like this semi-obsolete aristocracy royalty class who have a lot of power and keep it alive because they like doing it. And so it's kind of seen as traditional, but it's not like shopkeepers don't do this. And most people don't even think about whether or not it's moral or not, like it's just something that they've always done.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. I think that's an interesting way to kind of maintain that without having it just be kind of a weird aside to a otherwise normal society.
Yeah. It's still part of their society, but it's not like the only thing in their society. And it's the kind of thing they could get around if they ever wanted to do reforms on it, but they don't have any reason to because nobody's taking issue with it,
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, a thought I had was in modern big game hunting. And in fact, when I say modern, I mean all the way back to like 200 years ago, big game hunting was almost always done mostly by like hired help, did all of the work. And then the guy who actually does the kill just shows up at the last minute and like is handed the gun and is like, okay, now you can kill it. But like all of the tracking and trapping and herding and all of the like management and making it happen all happens by other people who aren't really going to get the kill, and aren't really in it for the like fun of it. They're doing it because it's their job.
Mm-hmm. Whereas the other guy's just there for the photo op and the Facebook posts.
Yeah. To go up on Hishku-10 Instagram. So on that note, I'm thinking about why they might target humans. And the thing that comes to mind is like, I don't like, when I saw the Predator again recently, I don't like the fact that the thing is like 7.5 feet tall. And there's a shot where it's like got Arnold, who's a huge dude.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Arnold up against the wall by the neck, and is like his little dangly feet are coming off the bottom. And I'm like, nobody, like, that's not a big game hunt to me. That's a duck hunting thing almost. Like, it's not.
That's just high school bullying.
Yeah. Like the fact that the Predator is so much more physically imposing than your average human doesn't jive with me. I think of like the real big game hunters would be going after something super dangerous, whereas humans just kind of aren't. So, one thing that we might talk about a little bit is what actually would make us like a physically imposing species, something that why the Hishku-10 might be coming after us. What is it that humans are so well renowned for?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this, and like there actually are some things that humans are physically quite good at, even if you don't count our big old brains, where we're trappers and we build steam engines and guns and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just a human out in the wild. There's a couple of things we're really good at. One, we are endurance monsters. Like almost no species on Earth can cover the amount of distance that we can while in movement. Like we can just keep going forever. Like no other creature on the planet runs ultra marathons like we do.
Yeah.
with some caveats, there are birds that fly all the way across the globe, basically on one sitting. But like within our category, we are huge about that. And in fact, that's how humans used to hunt. We were endurance hunters, which means that like
we just wore things down, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We would just follow an antelope until the antelope they just gave up because they were too tired, and the humans just walk up and slit their throats. And I mean, there are still places in the world where that's the practice, and it's amazing. And it's mostly just about keeping an eye on the tracks and keeping an eye on where the animal is, and then just basically power walking your way over there.
What are your strengths as a species? Power walking.
Exactly. And so they thinking about that from the prospect of another species was like, if you're being hunted by a human, you can outrun them most of the time, but that they're still just going to show up. And then like you run away from them again. And then a little while later, they just show up and they keep coming and they keep coming and they never let you sleep. That's terrifying, honestly.
Humans, the inevitable end.
Yep. And then we're also pretty good at, we're pretty resilient. Especially like archaeologists have been looking at human bones and other hominid species. And like we can actually take a fair amount of damage and keep going, especially blunt force trauma and things like that, where we the number of healed broken bones in like Neanderthal skeletons is bonkers. And humans are kind of on that same scale. So the idea that like a lot of other species, like a horse, if you break a horse's leg, that horse is dead.
Yeah, that's game over.
Yeah, it's game over. And a lot of prey animals are like that. If you break one of their limbs, they are done for. Whereas humans, we break a limb, like we go easy on it for a little while and we can keep going and we come up with ways around it. And especially working together as a small tribe will make up for each other's shortfalls. And so that's you can imagine that when looking at it from another species, from these Hish-Qu-Ten might not have that same sort of resiliency. And so the idea of like, we almost seem like unstoppable Terminators. Like you could break our arms and we'll still come after you. And then the final one is of strengths for humans is like literally chucking stuff. Like the ability to pick up an object and just hurl it at something with reasonable accuracy is unknown in the animal kingdom outside of hominids.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes us a danger at a distance. Now I think for the Hish-Qu-Ten, that's probably not a particularly dangerous thing because they're probably looking at, ranged weapons like guns and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But it is something to keep in mind that like if you're thinking of us in reference of if you were a deer, or actually more specifically a rabbit, like if you're a little prey species and you think that you're safe because they're way over there and I could run off, and then a rock just hits you in the side of the head.
Yeah. That's
terrifying.
So obviously, I mean, these are things that have kind of given us the apex predator position on our planet. But as compared to the predators as seen in the film, or the Hish-Qu-Ten as seen in the films, still not a lot to recommend us as a danger.
So I'm thinking of our version of the Hish-Qu-Ten they would have to be smaller and frailer, and maybe they're like faster, like kind of thinking of them a little bit more like elves than orcs.
Okay.
Where they're all spidery and they can sprint really well. They're going to be faster than humans and they can climb, but they're going to get winded before we do. And then also maybe just straight up, if you got your hands on one of these things, like your bare hands, you could tear one of them apart.
Are you thinking they're like almost like child-sized, or still just kind of human-sized, but kind of thin and frail?
Yeah, I'm thinking roughly human-sized, like somewhere between 5 and 5.5 feet, something like that. Or like small human, especially because that makes it good for like seeing them out of the corner of your eye, where you'd be like, is that just a person or not? That seems about right to me, like that sort of range. But not like Hobbit. That seems a little bit weirder. But that, they're very, maybe they have hollow bones, sort of bird style.
Okay.
Which makes them a lot lighter than humans, which means they could do things like stand on. One second, I'm going to see if I'm taking over. 1 sec.
Sure thing.
Are you about to head out? Oh.
Hey there, Peanut.
It's a peanut.
A good boy. Who's a good boy?
He can't hear you. But still. Oh, yeah. I don't quite trust him out in the house yet, so I'm gonna keep him in here until Alex goes, and then I'll close the door. Okay, so like I'm thinking, like maybe they have hollow bones, like birds, which means they could do things like stand out on a very thin tree branch, and it might not even bend because they're lighter than humans. That's kind of creepy. But that if a Hishkutan got into just a hand-to-hand, UFC fight with a human's going to be like a bear compared to them. They're just going to rip them apart. Please don't sniff the mic. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear that. So I think I would love to keep that cloaking device for them. That seems like such a useful thing for a big game hunter, right? To be able to actually like move around without being seen.
What do you feel about getting rid of some of their other accoutrement?
Yes. I think almost everything else that we see in that first movie, I'm willing to get rid of. I don't like I really don't like the shoulder mounted plasma cannon thing.
Yeah.
It's such bullshit. Like which, I mean, on the one hand, them having bullshit that it seems unfair is about right.
Yeah. That is an analog to modern big game hunting these days.
That's true. But I'm thinking like, I almost kind of want to make their build like a bit bigger and a bit more intimidating.
Okay.
Than just that tiny little cannon. Cause that tiny little cannon just seems so, like it didn't have any sacrifice to it. It's just like, it follows their vision and like, like the amount of damage it could do in the movie was.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, instead of them having that little shoulder mounted cannon, they have a 5 foot long rifle or something like that. That has just incredible range. That would be cool. Because that seems more like it also leans into the big game hunting giant rifle oeuvre that we're familiar with.
Sure. Yeah.
And I definitely want to keep the crab face, just because it's scary as heck. I like it. What was also bothering me was that heat vision a bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Okay. So in the lore of the at least the first Predator movie, the predators only show up on the hottest years. Okay. And then if you can watch as you watch the show or the movie, you notice that the predator has heat vision, that it can see how hot a person is compared to the environment around them. But the thing is, if it's 90 degrees in the jungle and the person is walking through the jungle, their skin temperature is actually going to be colder than the world around them. Like because they're radiant and like it's not like a temperate environment. It's super hot in there, they said. And then once the predator takes off their mask, like their heat vision goes away almost. Like you see several shots from the predator's vision after he takes off his mask, and that's the dog again. And like he couldn't differentiate between Arnold and the like world around him anymore. And that seems kind of weird to me. So I'd like to tweak that a little bit.
And I also do kind of like the idea that it's basically like this hugely vision impaired guy who's just decided he's a big game hunter.
You know what? That's actually, maybe that is appropriate, is that like those are his corrective lenses.
Yeah.
That's good. But like, maybe that is the answer, is that like, they're actually not very good at it. Although a creature that is from a super warm environment probably wouldn't have heat-based vision. It seems like not super useful in those scenarios.
Yeah. Unless there's maybe like threats that came from like a very cold source of something. Or
well, and the thing is like, if you're talking about quote unquote heat vision, what you're mostly talking about is like is deep into the infrared for black body radiation, and infrared waves are actually pretty easy to block. Like regular air blocks them over a certain distance. And so you end up having a pretty short range vision. And so unless you want to, get super close to the human as you're hunting them, then it's actually not a very good way to view humans. You'd be better off with something in the visual spectrum, or maybe even ultraviolet or something along those lines.
Would there be a reason why they would have this setup and would like rely on it even instead of normal vision? Like maybe it just doesn't occur to them
Yeah. One of the answers is, one second, I gotta wrangle a puppy.
All right.
Okay. Hey, puppy. Puppy. Come on, pretty boy.
So,
pretty boy is up.
I don't know if you can hear that, but my neighbor has his dog out now. And he's a very, very talkative boy.
Oh, yeah. Pretty boy has learned that he can speak. And he suddenly became very talkative over the past couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, what was we were on? Oh, yeah. So the question was, is there an environment that would arise for them to have sort of infrared vision?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they could live. One of the reasons why we have the visual spectrum that we do is because the atmosphere that we live in is highly transparent to those spectrums.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a chemist, so I can't tell you what the content of their atmosphere might be that infrared would be more transparent than others.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that is like their home planet. The atmosphere is such that the best spectrum for you to see in is more of the infrared.
Mm-hmm.
That is an option.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a cool idea. If we were to go somewhere and they're like, well, why don't you just, use your ultrasonic scream to use echolocation? And you're like, well, I don't have that.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking one thing I like the idea of is that that echolocation actually would be really, or sonic tracking would be really cool as a visual way to represent them visually, like their vision.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could see not as things move, but maybe the ripples of sound that they're making in the air would be a really cool visual. They did that in the Splinter Cell games at various points. I always really, really liked the way that looked. Okay, now we get to hear dogfights in the background. So sorry, listeners. That could be really cool. Also, although I do still like the idea of them just having sort of a like they take their glasses off and it sucks now. By that same token, I like the idea that they can't really breathe on our atmosphere, or
oxygen is kind of poisonous to them.
Yeah,
high dosage.
Yes, or maybe it's carbon dioxide or nitrogen or some other thing that's in our atmosphere. Maybe water vapor. Maybe they're not used to having so much water vapor in the air.
Okay, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, maybe they're from a very dry environment, or the other way around. Maybe they're from a very, very wet environment, and anything that anytime there's less than 100% humidity, it feels like they're going to dry up and blow away.
You're going to have fun editing this episode, I can tell.
I'm just going to leave it in, and if people get to hear the barking in the background, then they're just going to have to live with it. Although I will.
Oh, welcome to life in 2020, where we're all stuck in here with our animals.
Yeah, 2 puppies is a lot of puppy. So, what was it? Okay, so we can imagine these as like a small, slight creature, not very physically strong thing, and then they've got these big plasma cannons that take chunks out of humans. But then also, like, the one who gets the kill is probably the least skilled of everything. Like, what you end up with is actually a team of Hishkuten. The Hishkuten. So you have this whole team of Hishkuten, most of whom are working just sort of to funnel a person into the kill zone, so that you have a whole team of Hishkuten working just so that the semi-inept aristocrat at the center of all of this can get that one kill shot. So rather than you have a team of whatever the guys were in the Predator movie, Green Berets or whatever, disappearing off into the jungle, and then one Hishkuten killing them all. Instead, it would be more like them luring off a single human and arranging for that human to come into the area that they have set up to funnel them down into this one spot.
Okay, this is dumb, but it just made me think of a bunch of predators sitting around a computer catfishing someone to come out and meet them so they can be hunted.
That is not that is dumb, but I also like it. Where that's a different sort of horror movie where instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger and his team of brash mercenaries, it's instead the style where a bunch of kids have been lured out to a cabin somewhere, and then A lot of these creatures are mostly just about like separating them and like flushing them out of the cabin and scaring them to go off on their own, and then getting them to a certain location where they can be taken out by that one with the gun.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool.
Very cabin in the woods vibe.
Yeah. Or they might even be, if you wanted to have it be where they really are trying to get the most worthy opponents, instead of just showing up randomly during some unrelated thing, they're the ones who hire them. Where, using their, they they break into the internet and just like hire these guys through a proxy and say, hey, you need to come up, grab your guns, show up at this valley. There's some terrorists for you to kill. And then instead of terrorists, it's all Hishkuten hunters.
Interesting.
Okay, I'm picking you back up. Ugh.
Yeah, I do kind of like the idea of the Hishkuten basically using the established technology of their prey species against them.
Yeah.
Sort of draw them out. Like maybe it's something they don't even really have themselves. Like, they're supposed to be like kind of this advanced spacefaring nation, but I kind of like the idea that maybe some of the cultural, like social media, things like that aren't something that's a thing for them.
Uh-huh.
And so learning to manipulate that as a tool or like seeing it almost as a weakness of their foes.
Right.
Kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, where they're like, oh yeah, they'll make deals not even face to face. And so how stupid is that? They don't even know who I am. They think that I am a 14-year-old girl who wants to exchange nudes with them. And instead I am going to blow them in half with this plasma cannon.
Well, I mean, at that point we know who we're rooting for in this film.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a way to reframe things.
And then we get our Predator versus Predator movie. So,
okay, I like it. That's the punchline for the whole episode right there. Yeah, they would definitely. Okay, so what else can we say about these biologically? We know that they're from a somewhat different environment from us. Possibly they've got a different atmosphere, so they wouldn't be able to breathe ours necessarily, which means they're going to have some sort of breathing apparatus. We had said that they're built more slightly than humans. Maybe they have hollow bones. They're not particularly strong, but they do have excellent cloaking devices.
So something this is putting me in mind of is more like less big game hunting and more almost like spearfishing, where like the hunter is so out of his own environment. The main challenge is coming from like dealing with the environment rather than the prey.
Yeah, that's true. That is kind of cool. And the humans are all just almost incidental to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the idea that they're coming after us because of our reputation in a couple of areas. They're like, oh, these are the most endurance hunting creatures in the galaxy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that mostly they're like, also on that sense, there's the whole meme about, Earth is actually a hell planet and you don't know you're on a hell planet until you leave.
Yeah.
And so they're like, can you believe that Earth is, there is both like permanent ice year round and also like active volcanoes and deserts and like all of these things. Like there's all these dangerous species. Like this is Earth is the Australia to the rest of the universe. And like
the dominant species on the planet murders thousands of its own species every year.
Yeah. Well, and they keep apex predators in their homes.
Yeah.
Just for the fun of it because they like them. In multiple different kinds of species. And they will even, breed smaller animals to feed to the ones they keep in their homes. Humans are like, we are kind of space. If you want to do it, we are kind of space orcs. Like we participate in blood sports, like boxing and American football, which are like dangerous and like cause serious amounts of injuries to everybody who participates in them. But they also are like one of our biggest pastimes. And everybody only goes to the Formula One races in order to see the crashes.
Yeah. We talked about the predators being like having hollow bones, and so the idea of a sport that just involves two humans just smashing into each other is just horrifying.
Yeah.
But also kind of thrilling to hunt.
Yeah, exactly. We're a good target for that because we seem very badass. Whereas they're not they're not actually doing that. They're not coming anywhere close to us. They're going to stay several miles away as they get us in their sights.
Oh yeah.
After having carefully arranged that we will be in the kill zone for it. Yeah, if they're not very strong, maybe if they're hollow boned and sort of comfortable in trees, they might actually be a more sort of avian-ish species. Like they might have sort of feathery, instead of dreadlocks, they might have actual like feathers. Maybe even with limited flight would be kind of cool.
Now I'm just picturing those 4 mouth fingers just around a beak.
I was thinking sort of within a beak, like a beak opens and it's got that stuff inside.
That's horrifying. I like it.
But I'm also thinking of sort of like the Archaeopteryx and stuff like that, where it's like sort of it's a species that hasn't completely evolved into flight, but that it has got enough adaptation to do some gliding, and maybe when it runs, it can use its arms to like help flap and guide it and sort of take off some of the weight. So these things might be super fast over short distances. And that's kind of cool, where like you could kind of see them moving so fast that you don't register that it could be the same one. Like you run away from it, and then by the time that you get to, you get half a mile away, it's in front of you now and has been waiting for you for a while, and like is running from branch to branch anime style.
I also kind of love the idea that maybe there's like tiers of this ultimate hunt where like, if you just participate and you use your plasma rifle or whatever, you get your participation trophy. Yeah. But there are some who have like they'll hunt humans with like their bare hands or whatever.
Yeah.
And like lay traps for humans and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's all about having like that visceral melee experience and surviving it.
Okay. So I think there's even a lower tier than the plasma rifle one, which is sometimes they abduct humans off of Earth and bring them to one of their planets.
Okay.
Then the human is at a huge disadvantage because they're outside of their own atmosphere. You're not fighting Earth the same way that you were if you come to Earth. And so those are like, that's almost just like being led up for the slaughter, right?
Yeah.
And they still are technically hunting you, but they're not doing it. They're not really doing it in even the like easiest way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the human's dying from exposure on your planet while you hunt him, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And that's the sort of vanity version of this whole thing. But then there are some of the more hardcore ones who will like, even face humans hand to hand. That'd be kind of cool. That is cool. I mean, like, and that leads us into sort of different versions of how you can integrate these into a story. We talked already about the sort of cabin in the woods version, where a bunch of normal humans are brought out to the middle of nowhere and are periodically hunted one by one by these creatures, which, you know what, it like makes that narrative convention of the people dying one by one to the monster into like, that is not just the happy happenstance of the movie maker, but that's like literally what these things have been doing the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, and it makes it turns something which is kind of why is it always like that convention into, no, this is specifically what they're doing. And then you have like a version of it where mercenaries are hired to, and brought out specifically to act as noble foes to the Hinkuti, Hishkuten. I'm never going to remember it. It's going to happen. Okay.
I have it opened up here on my screen to remind me.
So yeah, the Hishkuten will hire mercenaries specifically to come out to certain areas and fight them. And like, maybe it's just, maybe they're even up, like the most noble of them are even up front about it, where they're like, yeah, you're going to come out and you're going to fight some of us. And if you manage to survive for more than 48 hours, we let you go and you give you a bunch of platinum or something, which is, not valuable to us, but is valuable to you. That's kind of cool. I am sad to say, I know enough about the Aliens versus Predator universe to know that there is at least one character who is a human who is raised by predators.
Of course.
And of course. But that is, I mean, you could do something like that in this version of them as well. Somebody who is like us, basically a human is an orc to these characters. They are the blood sport loving, super strong, very durable character to all of these like, semi-predatory birds they're hanging out with all the time. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic to throw humans in. Like, we're so often thought of as like the center of a spectrum. and to have one instead as the extreme of one of these spectrums, where we are, instead of being, oh, we're just the smallest, the weakest, the smartest. Instead, we're like, no, we're dumb, but we're very big and strong. And so,
yeah, that's kind of interesting twist on that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Like because like we said, this whole species isn't all about this blood sport bull. So there's probably plenty of them who are like, you know what, let's hire some humans to act as bodyguards for us during this one, tense diplomatic mission or something, or even as a status symbol. Oh, can you imagine the status symbol of like your species hunts these humans for sport, and then you show up to an event with an honor guard full of them? You come into a party surrounded by humans, and then everybody around you is all like, oh my God. Like it's as if one of us showed up to a Christmas party surrounded by bears.
Yeah. I was actually just thinking, like, it's gotta be like those YouTube videos where like you see that guy just like hugging a bear and whatever, and you're just sitting there waiting for like him to rip his limbs off. And and you're sitting there waiting for like the human to just do what humans do and chuck a rock at you or something.
Oh man. In that context, a food fight is in a whole different sort of thing. It's like the non-lethal version of something that is super dangerous to them. That's kind of cool. I like that. Or like you bring the honor guard of humans and they start a food fight throwing pies at all of the Hishkuten attendees, and they all freak out about it.
I do kind of like how we've taken the Predator and kind of where with most of our things we either make them more badass or more horrifying, and we've kind of made them weenies in this.
Well, but like they are weenies. Like that's the thing is like the original Predator, at least in the first movie, is kind of a weenie. He spends most of the movie using his stupid plasma rifle from the safety of his cloaking device to kill humans, and then and then he skins them and acts all weird about it. But it's like, and apparently that one has a thing about attacking humans who are only if they're armed or whatever. But like still, okay, yeah, that one has that one human has a submachine gun, but he can't see me, and I have a plasma like launcher that I only have to look at him to kill. Like that's not an honorable thing. He is just like shooting fish in a barrel, basically. So yeah, he is a weenie. We're just making them the weenies that they always were. Yes, you're a cute little doggy. Yes, I know. He's also like very much trying to get off of my lap now. I don't think there's any chance that I can edit the dog stuff out of this episode. I may just leave all of it in. Oh. Well, I think, do you have any other further ideas you want to talk about?
I think that's all I've got for Predators.
Okay.
Hishkuten.
Hishkuten / Yanjal, whatever. Yeah, I think that's it. On that case, bye.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Monster Mechanics. This is normally where I would plug our social media accounts and Patreon. But considering the state of things here in the US, we here at Monster Mechanics would like to encourage you to do what you can to help fight the epidemic of violence by our nation's police. Donating, volunteering, and protesting are all excellent ways to make it clear that we will not stand for this. To that end, we've included some links in our show notes where you can get started with your support. Monster Mechanics is produced and edited by Scott Paladin. This episode was hosted by Scott Paladin and Zach Jaquays. This episode featured a special guest appearance by Peanut the Foster Dog, who has been placed with a forever home and is getting, as I hear it, very spoiled. All ideas generated during this podcast are released under a do what the f*** you want public license.